Hello, everyone. Welcome to Climate of Emotions Day 2. In this retreat, we're diving into emotions, climate change, and social justice. And today's panel is actually part of a series of events occurring over 3 days. This is the second day, and it includes intimate, small group, and experiential sessions. So if you're watching now or later, let's hear in the chat from some of you, what are some feelings that are coming up for you after day 1? And if you haven't gotten a chance to watch the day 1 panels, maybe we can pop some links to those in the chat. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. And today's theme is radical reimagining, envisioning new solutions, new worlds at the root of what could be possible, and also celebrating the strength of our imagining that comes from diversity. So I'm really excited to welcome 3 really exciting panelists. And could you all please introduce yourselves and tell us what is something in nature that helped you see the world in a radically different way? And maybe we could go Anna first, Anna Christina, and then Mabel, and then Sofía. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Josh, Patty, and Juan for the invitation. My name is Ana Cristina Becerra. I am from Peru, and I am an adaptation specialist working at the United Nations Environment Program. And I think one of the things that helped me radically change or have a perception of the world is the Amazon. This might sound very broad, but perhaps to give some context, I am Peruvian, as I said, and although I have been born and raised in Lima, my family is from the highland jungle of Peru. So growing up, I've been that kid that has gone to the same place for summer vacations, which was the town where my parents and my grandparents and all my family grew up. So Lima is a great city for those who have been here, perhaps but being able to go every summer there and see how great and powerful and majestic the Amazon was, and just seeing how the landscape changed from the coast to the Andes and then going to the jungle. And I think it shaped how I perceive things, both in terms of practical decisions, such as deciding to study forestry, and on more perhaps deeper things like how I perceived inequalities from a very young age, from living from the city and knowing how it was in rural areas.
Yeah, well, I think it's my turn. My name is Mabel. I am from Panama. I'm a 25 years old environmental engineer and climate change activist. I belong to a youth organization that's called Youth and Climate Change, where we try to put the climate change topics into the agendas of our governments and our decision makers. So we're trying to move forward the climate change actions so we can build a more resilient country. And I think that during my whole childhood, I have been in the city. I'm a city girl, but I love outdoors. So I realized I found a way to see everything with greatness. So I love the element of nature, the sunrise and the sunsets. I think that every single time I stop myself and watch those 2 moments in the day, I am able to say, you know what? It's a new day coming. It's a new opportunity to be better. It's a new opportunity to keep going towards this amazing and great field that's climate change. And sometimes I think that we can all feel a little bit despair and overwhelmed with everything that involves the climate change crisis, and even more us that we're young. So I believe that those moments where I can stop and say, a new day is beginning or a new day is coming, it's really amazing for me, and it helped me change the way I see everything. Because even though it will be a bad day, I know that a new day will be coming and there's a new opportunity to do better and to be better. And to have that opportunity is really amazing for me. And as I said, as a city girl, for me that's the best thing, to see nature in that way and to almost change the way I look at everything and be amazed by the little things. Not necessarily I have to be in the mountain, I have to be in a river to realize that it's beautiful, the nature is beautiful, and that there's a force in nature that we need to respect and we need to pay tribute to. So that will be my special moment in nature.
Yeah, so I think it's my turn now, so I'm going to introduce myself real quick. I am Sofía. I am a political science student here in Costa Rica, and I work with several organizations and movement in, like, the national space and also at the international level. For example, I'm part of Friday for Future Costa Rica. I mean, here in Costa Rica, also at the international level, doing some activism, organizing, stuff like that. I'm also a part of it's like a network. The name is Latina for Climate. What we do basically is to try to highlight how we as Latin American women, we see how climate change and how this is impacting our regions, our context, our cultures, and at the end of the day, I would say human rights. And something that like impacts me about nature, I would say, is us humans, like our I don't know, how power to change the world, to have a better society. Like we're part of nature. We need to acknowledge that. We often forget that we're part of nature. That we need to live with balance with nature. We have to live with harmony with animals, with biodiversity, and I mean there is power in the world to change that. So it would be my answer.
Thank you for those beautiful answers. I'm really excited for our conversation, especially after hearing your introductions. So yesterday we got a chance with some other panelists to talk a lot about the intersections of lots of problems that we're facing. And I know that we all know about how big and heavy and complex these issues are. But I want to actually focus a lot on optimism and imagination today. And I think all three of you have a lot of, that plays a big role in your work. But I want to talk about what that role is. So my first question for you is, what role does optimism play in your work for fighting for climate justice? And how do you keep a hold of that optimism? And maybe the same order.
Like you were just saying, like optimism is what perhaps keeps us going in the middle of it's not only, like you were saying, climate hazards or climate change, but it's a complex mixture of different social issues, and so, if we don't try to keep that hope that what we are doing actually will get to somewhere and will, contribute, I think it's very hard to keep going. So personally, I think that what keeps me inspired is having this type of spaces with people that come from different spectrums of, development and areas and backgrounds. There is this verse that says that in the multitude of counselors there is safety, and I believe that talks about how we need to be connected with each other, not only to learn from others, but also to be able to express what we're feeling. Because in those moments where we feel we're losing inspiration, perhaps we're not even realizing it. But by speaking with others, we give shape to those thoughts and those feelings, and we're able to name that. And that's how when you name it, you realize, okay, this is frustration. And perhaps the other person will say, yeah, I've been there and I did this, or why don't you think about this? And just by speaking with others, you are both receiving wisdom from them, but you're also exploring your own emotions and how you can, and just by recognizing them, you will be able to start thinking of ways to get that inspiration back, and how, if you know the reason why that thing that ignites inspiration or ignites passion in you is starting to come low, if you're able to find a root, or some of the reasons, you'll be able to tackle that. So for me, I would say just trying to stay connected and having a network of people that I trust and that I can keep communication with.
Thank you, Anna. Mabel, did you want to build on that?
Yes, I think that Anna pretty much said it all, because I agree with her in everything she said. I think optimism is the force that drives us to keep fighting this big fight against climate change. But I do believe that these spaces, and to feel that you are with other people, to feel that you have someone that you rely on, really helps us to keep going. So for me, these type of spaces and the opportunity to really talk with others and just listen to each other, listen to our experiences, to our life lessons, to everything we have done in this long or short time in this world. I think it's the best thing we can have. It's the best thing we can do. And right now it comes to mind a little picture that there is a little boy with a bunch of, I think they're plants, and he says, I'm going to change the world. And an adult says to him, so you're going to do it by yourself? And he says, no, but we're going to get along in the way. We're going to find people in the way. I think that's the best way to see it. Sometimes you can feel alone. Sometimes you can feel that you're the only one doing something, but there's other people that you're going to find in the path while you are doing it. So it's really important to keep optimism and to keep finding ourselves in this amazing path that's climate change and environmentalism and human rights and all that involves this amazing and big fight.
Mabel, I love that what you said about finding people in your path who are fighting the same fight, and that really relates to the idea of flocking together, which we're hoping to talk a lot about on day 3. So thank you. And Sofía, what about you on optimism?
Yeah, I have this quote about Cristiana Figueres. She's from Costa Rica, and she's also like one of the biggest architects of Paris Agreement. She always said that she's a stubborn optimism, and I love that. Like, actually, like the name of her podcast and everything. And I just want to agree with Anna that we are not alone, and it might feel like you're alone sometimes, and you maybe get like activist burnout. That's, I don't know. This is very common that you feel like maybe something that happens with me is that when I started doing activism, I'm from a social science, right? I'm not from a environmental science. And here in Costa Rica, when we talk about like environmentalism, we have this mindset of, if you're an environmentalist, that means that you're from a nature or like this kind of like environment sciences, and you're not specifically from a life. So it's like a bit confused about, is this the place that I want to be? And then I started doing more activism, getting more involved, and understanding that we all have different knowledge, different experiences, different topics that it might cut our interest, and that's important. Like, if I have a friend that she's from biology, and I have myself that I'm from social science, human rights, experience, expertise. If we can get together, we're going to have a more broad, a more complex and interesting way to explain how climate change or environmental policy is impacting our community, our country. When you work in a collective, that doesn't mean that everyone needs to have your same mindset. It's more that we all have the same things that we want to achieve, but we have different ways to do so. So I think that's what gives me optimism, that we are getting to know a lot of people in a way with different I don't know, topics, interests, and this is going to if we have everyone thinking the same way, I think I wouldn't be that optimistic. What keeps me like motivated is to get to know people with different visions of life and everything.
Thank you so much for that point, Sofía. And I really want to circle back around to that later, how the differences in what each of us, like the way that we're approaching the problems and the things that we envision for the future, can actually strengthen each other. And I want to answer really briefly for myself, which is what gives me optimism in this fight is actually like engaging my imagination for what the world could be, what could be possible for us, and trying to focus on that, like come from that place of hope. And I wonder what that's like for you folks, because for me, especially after reading Adrienne Marie Brown's work, I don't know if you've heard of her, but yeah, they have referencing like structural inequalities in the United States. They said, I often feel I'm trapped inside someone else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free. So I wonder, how does imagination act as a tool for each of you? What role has thinking about the future in a hopeful way played in your work? Mabel, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. I was actually thinking that if I can imagine, I can do it. So I do believe that imagination is key for everything we do, in a good way or in a bad way. So for me, reimagining a future or imagining a future is really important for my work as a climate activist, as an environmental engineer, what I want to do, what I want the future to be, what I want the future generations to have, what I want people to have. You know, if I want people to have human rights, then what I can do for it to happen. So for me, imagination is pretty much the ideology of us. You know, we need to have a way of thinking of what's going to be so we can make it happen. If we can imagine it, we can create it. So that's for me the key word of imagination, of ideas. And that's the importance of teaching our kids and our young people that they have the power to imagine a better world, a more just world. But they have to put their imaginations to work, and they have to actually think about it and think outside the box and do things that pretty much afraid us and fears us, and we're like, oh, I don't want to do that, maybe that's too much, maybe that's never gonna be a reality, or maybe that's something I cannot do. Sometimes we need to, you know, I'm going to imagine it. If I'm able to imagine it, maybe I'm able to get it done.
Beautiful, thank you. Sofía or Ana, what's calling to you out of what Mabel shared? Have you experienced that?
I really liked when she said, if I can imagine it, then it can happen, or I can do it. Because it made me think that something that pushes me on the work is this idea or the sense of imagining a world where we are free of certain stereotypes, but more especially of these hierarchies that sometimes make some people feel like, or some of us feel like our needs are more important, or that our priorities are more important than others. And I feel like if when I imagine a world without that, it pushes me, because I feel like if we could get to that point, then we would understand that if we don't understand that there is no such a thing of my needs being more important, but the world as a whole, you know, needing basic things such as, and this relates very, like, I think specifically to climate change, which is a topic that we all have in common. Like, if we understand that the world will not get to a point where we are able to fight climate change and adapt and create resilience and you know, be less vulnerable without others, and without making sure that everyone is safe and that we are all on the same, you know, without that understanding that we all need to be on the same boat for everything to work. that is what keeps me pushing, like, because I know that if we get to a point where we avoid these hierarchies and this way of thinking of us as superior or something, we will get to that point where we will be able to change and transform our perceptions, and in that way transform the realities we're living and contribute to, from fighting climate change to just start deconstructing other social issues we live.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Ana Cristina, thank you. I just want to shift the question a little bit because of something you said, which is about us needing to be on the same boat. And that really supports, but also somehow contradicts what Sofía was saying about the strength that we get from people having different viewpoints and different opinions and different backgrounds. So Sofía, how do we, maybe you can start on this question, how do we deal with that complexity of so many people are coming from so many different places and have different visions and different priorities and different backgrounds? How do we use that as a strength and not let it completely derail us? And how on the same page do we need to be?
Yeah, I think that we can be in the same boat, but do different stuff. Like, I don't know if we're using this metaphor or something, but if we live in a world that everyone thinks the same way, that study the same way, likes the same thing, it would be a very boring world, without imagination and collective imagination. I think that when we talk about living society, we all understand that we're living in the same, sphere and legal and political terms. I don't know, but at the end of the day, we're talking about different people trying to get together with different backgrounds. Like, being different is not bad. Like, being different is also good, actually. Like I said, if we all think at the same way, it's going to be a very boring space. When we talk about differences, sometimes it's a little bit gets to a point of conflict. But without conflict, without negotiations, without ways to put the common good at the sphere and the center of everything, without all of that, we couldn't, and without all these social processes, we are without that, I couldn't imagine ourselves here today. Without negotiating, without knowing that maybe not everyone thinks the same way as myself, these kind of spaces, maybe it wouldn't be possible to have these spaces we all think the same way. Why should we start talking about this topic? Why should we try to have more climate education in our communities, in our country? Why should we do political lobby? And if all the politicians think the same way in terms of going to a very sustainable path, what is the role of climate activism then? So that's the whole point. If we in terms of even internal in the climate activism, if we don't think of this way, only environment, we are not putting attention to humans and how climate is impacting humans, and if we think about only humans, we're forgetting about how our practices in life are affecting environment and vice versa. So I think having negotiation, having conflict, having debates, it's not that bad. I think it's part of the social process of human beings, and what we need to do is to get the most of it, learn from our mistakes, from our achievements, and that's it. Living in society is different. It's difficult, but it's something possible.
Thank you, Sofía. And I'm really excited to actually talk about what futures you folks are imagining, because that's my favorite thing to talk about. But because this is climate of emotions, first I'd like to do a really quick check-in. In a few words, what are some of the emotions that are behind this work for you today? Just a few words. Mabel, and then Ana Cristina, and then Sofía.
Yes, I think that for me right now is definitely happiness, because these spaces always makes me really happy, because I'm with people that I really admire and I can learn from them. So happiness, hopeful. I feel really hopeful about the future, but also sometimes overwhelmed, because sometimes I think that there's not enough, that I'm not doing enough, that even though I'm doing everything I can, it's not enough. So definitely that overwhelms me sometimes. So that will be my 3 emotions right now.
For me, I'll have to take one from Mabel, which is hope. Like just by being in this space, and not only in this space, but the whole, like this whole event, and all these workshops that I know are happening, and all these panels, and just knowing that so many people are getting connected, because we are all interested in learning more about this. It just gives me hope, and this fuels that inspiration also that we were talking about earlier. So I'm not sure if that's an emotion, but I would say inspired, like in the sense of just by having that hope now, that reignites that inspiration. And can it just be 2, or does it have to be? Did you say 3? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question. If it was
Just
3 or just
words.
emotions.
There was
okay.
no number, just a few words.
Okay, good.
Sofía.
Yeah, so I would say also I'm going to take hope as well. Like, all of these kind of spaces always gives hope to not like the people here on the panel, but also to everyone that's watching and will watch this event. Like, having and knowing that it's going to be an hour of your day that you're going to spend in something that is about climate emotions, climate education, how we can get together and do something as a whole, as a community. I think that's very important and gives me hope. Also, like Anna said, is like being inspired, not like a emotion exclusively, but I also feel inspired. I mean, not only about these 2 amazing girls and yourself, Em. I would say I feel inspired as well, like knowing that this kind of event exists, like this kind of way to amplify people from all around the world in different contexts exist. And I would say the other emotion is more into the how my Congress here in Costa Rica is working right now, and I would say angry. Yeah, I mean, I know that it's a bit of like mixed emotions. Like right now, we are trying to ratify this amazing agreement that is the SCASU agreement, and the Congress is, just trying to stop the ratification. And even though we are known for being this international, like human rights and green country, and at the end of the day, even our country, they don't really want to like ratify this important agreement. So of course, I'm like with this bit of like a mixed emotion, like what is going on with my country. So yeah, but I would say mostly like hopeful. Like at the end of the day, the power is not in the Congress and in the and the governments. The power is in the people, in this movement, in society. So I think that's the best.
Thank you, all of you. I think I'm also feeling hopeful, so it's really cool that we have a lot of hope together today. So in the context of some things that have come up, some people in the world might struggle with engaging their imaginations because of the society that we live in. Some people might think that it's not important, or that we have blocks to our imagination. And also we have these challenges of people having different viewpoints and different places they're coming from. So maybe we can model together talking about radical imagination for the future. What do you imagine, and how do our things that we imagine connect and build off each other? So I'd love to go around with short answers that build off of each other, and I'll start with a little bit of what I imagine. One of the things that I imagine is like transitioning off of fossil fuels. And so I like thinking about different ways that we can do things like that are in post fossil fuel or post petroleum based society ways, and like how we can do community based solutions. Ana Cristina, what is something about the future that you are radically hopeful for?
I am radically hopeful in the change of this perception or this idea that we have that everything has to be very fast-paced or immediate, or the changes need to be, immediately quantifiable or quantified, or like that we need to have profits right away. Because most of the things that we need for ecosystems and communities to be more resilient take time, because that's how many cycles work. I mean, each cycle in nature have different paces, of course, but most of them take generations, and we cannot keep thinking in terms of just fast 1 month, weeks results or how much money it makes. So I am imagining, decisions and a future where we shift this and start thinking in terms of like valuing why nature is important and why ecosystems, or why specific things are more long-term than others. So just changing to a more long-term mentality,
Yeah, I love that. Sofía, I see you nodding. What's something that you imagine? How does it connect with our vision?
Yeah, I was thinking about having more climate diplomacy, putting human rights at the center, but like of the all the conversations. But something that Anna said is very important is that change takes time, and that ecosystems takes time to to evolve and change and to get better, but also humans and also our society. Like we can't think in like really being realistic that our mindset as how we think about nature and our relationship with nature is going to change in about like a year. It's going to take a whole generation. Now we can see the difference between our generation and different generations. So I was just like nodding because Anna said that about change takes time, and also our social and cultural mindset takes time to heal and to change.
Thank you. And Mabel, what about you? You're still muted, I think.
I'm sorry. Yes, I was muted. I was thinking of something you said, about community-based solutions, and I think that I imagine a world when communities have enough resources so they can develop properly. Something as basic as water, that's a basic human right. There's a lot of communities and regions and countries that do not have it. So I really imagine a world where communities can have their solutions in their community and just leave the city alone for a while. Sometimes we only focus on the city and the solutions in the city and the urban cities, but we do not put our minds into the communities, into the rural areas, into the farmers. So I imagine a future where they are important too.
That's beautiful. And maybe we can go around again. I imagine a future where the food that we produce, where everyone has a hand in producing food, and the food that we produce is made without lots of excess chemicals. And
I think I'll go next. I imagine a world where we don't feel this need to consume this much, or to always get new stuff, or just feel like reusing or borrowing or, going to a thrift store or stuff like that. It's something that is considered like not nice or less, but like where we understand that we don't need more, that we already have plenty. Well, not everyone, but which is definitely, but that if we have something, we don't need to keep buying and consuming, and we don't need everything new. That we can learn to live with the things that we already have, if our basic needs are covered, of course. I mean.
Sofía, do you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. Actually, Anna said a very important point that we like. As myself, I have already like enough, plenty. Like I can live with what I have today, and I'm not going to like have the need to buy something else. I think that's very important. We live in a way of doing business, doing economy that makes us wanting more and more and more to accumulate wealth, to accumulate resources. And maybe, if we are able to switch to a more, I already have what I need, I don't need to have some like everything new, that will be like very helpful to distribute the wealth and the resources. When we talk about wanting to have more, we're talking about that we have already a privilege about already having what we need, what is essential, and we need. And I mean, if we live in this society, this like we perpetuate this already, like this system, like the need of having more. It's not actually a need; it's more a way to fit in society. So I think that's very important, and something that I imagine I love to have in a world is to have a real and sustainable, like a way to reactivate economy. Like right now, we are living in a pandemic and a social and economic crisis, and like myself, my country is talking about opening, like mining and exploiting petroleum and oil in our oceans and land. So just to be clear that we can switch to a very sustainable way to reactivate economy and doing like Anna said, we don't need short-term decisions to have a better future. And when we talk about these decisions of doing economy, like structuralism is going to give us some like profit at the short term, but we are not thinking about how is that going to impact future generations and ecosystems at the end of the day.
Yeah, that was amazing what Sophia said, and it's completely true. And only to put a little bit in this imagination process, I imagine a future where women are part of every single step of the decision making process that involves climate.
Yes.
I think that gender and climate change is a really big link, and sometimes women, not sometimes, most of the times, women are not in the decision making process. We are in the behind the scenes. We're working against to fight the climate crisis. We're working against these big enterprises, and we're trying for a better and more resilient world. But we're not part of the decision making process. So I do imagine a future where more women are part of this process.
I love that. And I love this process that we are in together, that we're modeling together, of engaging in this imagination. And I wonder, how can we work on a cultural shift where that kind of thinking is valued, because this is so important, I think, but we're somehow trapped in our cultural expectations of what change looks like. Mabel, you're nodding your head. Do you have any ideas?
Yes, I was thinking education, going back to the classrooms, going back to the kids, going back to the young people. Those are the key words for us to keep this imagination process alive and to help them build the future they want. Spaces where they can talk, where they can say, hey, this is what I would like for my future to be. so they can have the tools to make that future happen. I think that when I was young, no one told me, oh, you can imagine what you want to do. You can do it. It's part of you. No one gave me those tools. So I believe that education and empowerment are the two key words for this to really be a thing, and for people to realize that imagination is the key for us to keep moving forward.
Thank you. That's beautifully said. And I guess I've heard of this word. Well, we have this concept of a just transition, where we all know that we're here in this place of extractive economies and lots of other oppressive systems. And then we all have these visions. How are we going to get from here to there? What does a just transition look like that doesn't leave people behind? Do either of you want to, Sofía, do you want to touch on that a bit?
Yeah, I would say and agree with Mabel that everything starts with education. If we have like a new generations knowing the fact that we are not only living in a climate crisis, we don't need to be that negative. That that we are living in a climate crisis, but we have the power to change that. We have the power to overcome any crisis happening right now. I would just start with education, just start to not only like education at schools, I would say with your communities, with your families, like everything starts with your family. I would say go and talk with your parents, go and talk with your, I don't know, like more like very close friends and relatives. Like everything starts with education. If we are able to start changing the ways of thinking in our families, in our communities, in our, I would say like a very close circle of friendship, that's going to like lead us to a future generations, the future politicians, and decision-making persons and stakeholders that are going to have the same like mentality that a just transition is possible. But now we know that we need to start doing something now. Like we can like just wait those generations to take a step and lead this process. I would say also start with your family. Like for example, I'm becoming like vegetarian and vegan, and I mean I'm trying to also to my parents to follow this process. And I mean, for example, my dad is a lawyer, my mom is a nurse, so they are right now like they are that kind of people that is making decisions right now. So if I'm able, in my community, my family, to change and try to have a different perspective and conversations with them, I would say it's the first step of having a just transition. Like the just transition, it starts with yourself and with your family.
Thank you, Sofía. I have another thought about the cultural shifting that I think needs to happen, which is earlier we were talking about the sense of urgency, the time scale, and in this world of imagination and the process and discovery of what's happening, how do we make space for that and value that? How do we shift into recognizing that these issues are long-term and change might be slow when we feel this huge sense of urgency about what's happening and we're in these fast-paced societies? Ana Cristina, do you have thoughts on that, or does someone else want to go?
Yeah, and I think that what I was thinking relates a bit with what Sofía and Mabel were saying about these different perspectives. And I think that a way to help us that in the middle of this fast-paced mentality, we try to make space for different perspectives. It's just making sure that from wherever we stand, we try to invite us as many voices as we can, because the more stakeholders and the more actors we try to get involved, the more visions we'll have, and when we see those visions encounter each other, and just realizing that perhaps the way we see things, and that how from my position of privilege, perhaps I think that this issue can be solved very quickly. I'll see that for another person in the table, that's not how it works, because there are other issues that need to be solved first and that are more basic for them, that are related to basic needs, or and so that the process will take longer in order for all of us to thrive. So I would say that's something that will help change this mentality, would be trying to get more different voices involved in whatever processes we start.
Thank you, Anna. That's so important. And Sofía or Mabel, how do we do that? How do we create spaces where people from different backgrounds actually are welcomed in to share their visions, actually are celebrated for, oh, that idea is not what I thought, but I guess we should take it into account. Mabel, do you want to have a go?
Yes, I believe that sometimes we need to value the listening part. Sometimes we do not value enough the listening part of the process. And I think that to make these spaces where people can find each other, where people can listen to each other, is really important. And that's the way they're going to learn, or they're going to feel, oh, you know what, my voice counts. Someone is listening to me. Someone is listening to what I'm going through. Someone is listening to what for me is important. So I will say that creating spaces where we can really listen to each other, we can really almost feel what the other one is feeling, to grow in this empathy and to grow in this humanism, because we're all humans, and we need to realize that we are all in the same boat, because we are all human. Doesn't matter your race, your color, it doesn't matter anything. We are all human beings, and that's the biggest path we're going, that we're human beings trying to live in this world and trying to do better every single time. So listening to each other is the first step, so we can really keep moving forward, and we can all listen to all the perspective that people has in this field.
Thank you, Mabel. Ana Cristina or Sofía, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add real quick that when we talk about living in this very quick case life, we often forget to listen, and putting all the thoughts together, that when we forget to listen. And I think that's very important. If we are able to listen, we're able to hear different perspectives. And something that also is very important is that we don't to wait to the government, different, I would say, institutionalized I would say spaces to be created. We also need to fight for our own spaces and even create them. That's something important, being able to listen and also being able to fight for a really inclusive and representative space without, the governments or international community support.
Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together. It went really quickly. So I'd love to ask all of you to reflect on this conversation. What is something from this conversation that's strengthening your optimism, and how has it shifted your imaginations for the future, if at all? How about Mabel, you start?
Yes, I think that this conversation really helps me connect to the reason why we are all here, the reason why I am keep looking forward to keep fighting against this climate crisis and to keep giving solutions to the climate crisis. And it really has made me really happy and hopeful and optimistic about everything that we can do, and that the force and the energy is really inside us. We can make it happen. We can make the change. We just really need to empower ourselves. So I really feel empowered. I really feel hopeful, optimistic. And also I feel that there's hope. Like I said, there's a lot of things to do, but there's a lot of people willing to do it. So we can keep moving forward in that same path.
I think adding up to like this sense of hope, like I feel like we all mentioned hope when we were asked about our emotions, and that makes me think that the importance of emotions, like, which is I think the topic also of all this, like, because sometimes we have been taught to suppress emotions, but we actually have to learn to identify them, and like to let emotions also drive good things in us, like for example anger. I think anger against injustice can ignite your passion for trying to change something. So that is an example of how we can use our emotions to better do our work, and just keep that passion alive for what we do.
I would say my mom is a mental health nurse, so I grew up with the mixed feelings about that emotions are great. Like, it's not bad to have a bad day. It's not bad to feel sad. It's not bad to feel angry, and not being able to express your feelings. That this is a process that you need to deconstruct yourself. Like, this guy has this mindset of that everyone needs to be happy and everyone needs to feel like content with the society and with your life. And I think that's not the case. Like, without being angry, um without hope, I would say without that, change is not real, is not going to happen. Like, you need to feel anger, you need to feel that you don't feel part of something, that you are not being or feel representative. This is something that is going to change. Like, it's going to lead you to create and being able to be part of the change. Like, if everyone is happy, we don't have social problems. We don't have something to fight for. So I think emotions are very great. Also, very important to learn how to control them. Like, I would say, emotions can lead you to a better future and also to a bad, um, I would say, conflict. So that's like a thing to like think forward. Like, like, emotions are good. Also, you need to focus yourself also in how you're going to project those emotions.
Wow, a lot of those things are resonating so much and just bringing it back home to climate of emotions. Thank you all. And reminding me of the 6 seconds principles, that change starts on the inside, and that our emotions are all information and power. And like you folks were saying, they're not necessarily bad or good. They're just there to help us. So yeah, really powerful stuff. And I'd love to hear from people in the chat who are watching now or later. First of all, what future are you imagining? And also, what is something you are coming away with from this conversation? Thank you so much for being here and watching. And I have a reminder, which is please make sure you've signed up for the small group sessions and that you've received your Climate of Emotions self-study workbook so you can continue the work of this retreat. And there's a lot on emotions and imagining in there to guide you with your people to do imagining like we just did together. So I'm really excited to see what we all come up with. Thank you.
And I'm muted. I would like to thank you all. My name is Joshua Friedman. I'm the CEO of 6 Seconds, and I appreciate Em and panelists, you taking time to share perspectives with us, and for the work that you're doing and bringing people together and inviting change. And I know that sometimes it's incredibly difficult. I think Mabel and Ana Cristina, you both work in government, and I know that Sometimes it might feel like you're banging your head against the wall, and yet you're doing the work and you're advancing the conversations that we need to have. So thank you all. Thank you, Sofía, for your organizing work and bringing people together. And those who haven't looked at it yet, the workbook that Em mentioned, Em is actually the lead designer of this. It's an incredible resource about the themes of this conversation, about grappling with what's hard, about facing the challenges of intersectionality, and stepping forward anyway, finding optimism anyway, to engage our imagination, and then to connect with each other on purpose. And connecting with each other on purpose is our theme tomorrow, and one of our central goals at 6 Seconds. How do we connect beyond ourselves, connect with one another, and connect with the future that matters to us? So I hope that we will see you tomorrow at Climate of Emotions. As Em mentioned, we have workshops happening tomorrow. The theme of the co-create sessions is this question of finding purpose, and feeling support with one another in working towards that purpose. So I think we are well set up from today's panel to move into tomorrow's conversations. And thank you all for being here.